I, 34, female, never thought I'd be posting something like this, but I'm at my wit's end and could really use some outside perspective. This nightmare started about 3 weeks ago when I received the devastating news that my mom had passed away suddenly from a heart attack. For context, my mom and I were extremely close, especially after my dad died 5 years ago. She was my rock, my best friend, and an amazing grandmother to my son, Ethan, 4, male. When I got the call about my mom, I was at work and completely fell apart. My husband, James, 36, male, was away on a business trip that couldn't be cancelled without serious career repercussions. We have no family nearby except for my mother-in-law, Sandra, 62, female. Now, Sandra and I have never had the best relationship. She's always been critical of my parenting and has made countless passive-aggressive comments about how I'm not good enough at anything, honestly. Despite this, she's always claimed to love Ethan more than anything. So when I was desperate for someone to watch him while I rushed to my hometown about 3 hours away to handle funeral arrangements, I called her. Sandra agreed to watch Ethan for the weekend. I packed up his favorite toys, clothes, his comfort blanket, his medication for his mild asthma, detailed instructions about his routine, emergency contacts, and even included a notarized temporary guardianship form, giving her authority to make medical decisions if needed. I'm always over-prepared when it comes to Ethan, especially since he has asthma, and I wanted to make sure everything was covered. I also told her I'd call regularly to check in and that I'd be back Sunday evening. I dropped Ethan off Friday morning, and he seemed fine. He loves his grandma, despite her attitude towards me. I kissed him goodbye, reminded Sandra about his medication schedule, and left for my hometown. I called that evening to check in, and everything seemed fine. Sandra said Ethan was playing with some toys she'd bought him and had eaten dinner well. I asked to speak to him, but she said he was in the bathroom. I was upset, but figured I'd call again in the morning. The next morning, Saturday, I tried calling several times, but Sandra didn't answer. I started to get worried, but told myself she was probably just busy with Ethan. By afternoon, I was genuinely concerned and called James, who said he tried reaching her too. He couldn't get through either. I was in the middle of a meeting with the funeral director and handling my mom's affairs, so I couldn't immediately drive back. But I was planning to leave first thing Sunday morning instead of evening as originally planned. Around 8 p.m. Saturday night, I received a call from a police officer. My heart dropped when he introduced himself. He said that Sandra had called them, claiming I had apparently abandoned my daughter, already a red flag since Ethan is a boy, and that she was worried about my mental state. She told them I had left without any supplies for Ethan, no medication, no clothes, nothing, and that I had been unreachable for days. She claimed she was saving my child from neglect. I was absolutely stunned. I explained the situation, that my mother had died, that Sandra had agreed to babysit, that I had provided everything Ethan needed, and that I had been trying to reach her all day. I mentioned the temporary guardianship form and all the supplies I'd left. The officer sounded skeptical of Sandra's story from the start, but needed to investigate. He asked if I could send photos of text messages confirming the arrangement, which thankfully I had. While I was on the phone with the officer, another officer went to Sandra's house to check on Ethan. That officer found Ethan's bag with all his supplies hidden in Sandra's guest bedroom closet. The medication was there, along with the guardianship form and my detailed instructions, all evidence that I hadn't abandoned my child but had made careful arrangements for his care. When confronted, Sandra doubled down, claiming I was an unfit mother who often left Ethan without proper care. She even said I had a history of disappearing for days at a time. Completely untrue. The police, seeing the evidence, Didn't buy her story. They informed me that Ethan was safe but clearly confused by the situation. They suggested I return as soon as possible. I left immediately, driving through the night to get back. When I arrived at the police station Sunday morning, Ethan ran to me crying. He told me that Grandma had told him I wasn't coming back, that I didn't want him anymore. He said she had taken away his phone, a simple kid's phone for emergencies, when he asked her to call me. The police confirmed that they found his phone in Sandra's purse with several missed calls from me. The police explained that Sandra was currently being questioned and they were considering charges for filing a false police report and potentially for custodial interference. They asked if I wanted to press charges, but I was too overwhelmed to make that decision on the spot. All I wanted was to take my son home and comfort him. When James finally arrived home 2 days later, he was furious with his mother. He immediately called her, demanding an explanation. Sandra claimed she was protecting Ethan because she thought I was having a mental breakdown after my mother's death and wasn't in a fit state to be a parent. She said she was only thinking of Ethan's well-being. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, we received a certified letter from a lawyer. Sandra had filed for emergency custody of Ethan, claiming I was mentally unstable, had abandoned him, and was an unfit mother. The temporary hearing was scheduled for the following week. I broke down completely. Not only was I grieving my mother, but now I was fighting to keep my son. James was beyond livid. He immediately contacted his siblings to inform them of what their mother had done. To our surprise, they weren't shocked. Apparently, Sandra had a history of manipulative behavior and had tried to interfere in their lives as well, though never to this extent. James's brother Matt revealed that Sandra had once called CPS on his wife for neglect when she refused to let Sandra take their daughter on an overnight trip without their permission. We hired an attorney who assured us that Sandra had no grounds for custody. We had ample evidence that I had made proper arrangements for Ethan's care. The police report contradicted her claims, and there was no history of any concerns about my parenting. Still, the stress of having to defend myself as a parent while grieving my mother was almost unbearable. Yesterday was the temporary hearing. Our attorney presented the evidence, text messages, confirming the babysitting arrangement, the detailed instructions and supplies I'd packed, the temporary guardianship form, and statements from the police officers who responded to Sandra's call. The judge quickly dismissed Sandra's petition for emergency custody and scheduled a full hearing for next month. Outside the courtroom, Sandra approached us crying that she was only trying to help and that we were turning everyone against her. James told her firmly that she was not to contact us or Ethan until after the hearing next month, and that he was deeply disappointed in her manipulation and lies. Now we're home, and Ethan is still asking questions about why Grandma said I didn't want him anymore. I'm trying to explain in age-appropriate ways without demonizing his grandmother, but it's so hard. James's siblings have all reached out, offering to testify about Sandra's history of manipulation, if needed, for the full hearing. I'm torn between wanting to press criminal charges for the false report and just wanting this nightmare to be over. Part of me feels like pressing charges would just extend this ordeal and keep Ethan in the middle of it all. But another part of me is terrified that without serious consequences, Sandra will continue to try to interfere in our lives. Am I overreacting? Should I press charges for the false police report? How do I explain this to Ethan without traumatizing him further? Has anyone dealt with something similar with a manipulative in-law? Update 1. First, I just want to take a moment to thank everyone who reached out with support, advice, and kind words. It really meant a lot to me and to James. Past few days have been nothing short of a whirlwind, and honestly, I'm still trying to wrap my head around everything that's happened. It's been emotionally exhausting, but also eye-opening in many ways. After a lot of discussion, long talks between James and me, and also multiple conversations with our attorney, we made the difficult but necessary decision to press charges against Sandra for filing a false police report. It wasn't a decision we took lightly, but in the end, our attorney explained that having a formal legal record of what she did could be really important down the road, especially if she ever tries anything like this again. It felt like the right thing to do to protect ourselves and, most importantly, to protect Ethan. When we talked to the police, they were actually very supportive and understanding. They even told us they had already started building a case against Sandra based on the evidence they had been collecting, so we weren't starting from scratch, which was a relief to hear. Then, just a day after we made that decision, something happened that really rattled us. Sandra showed up at our house without warning. Thankfully, I wasn't home at the time. I had taken Ethan to his therapy appointment. We've started him with a child psychologist to help him work through everything that's been going on lately. He's still so young, and we want to make sure he has the tools and support to process all of this in a healthy way. James was working from home that day, and he was the one who ended up answering the door. According to him, Sandra was a complete mess. She was hysterical, going back and forth between sobbing and yelling. One moment she was crying, saying she was just trying to help, and the next she was angrily accusing me of turning her son and grandson against her. It sounded like she was completely losing control. James, being the calm and collected person he is, thought quickly and started recording the entire conversation on his phone, which turned out to be a really smart move. When we later showed the video to our attorney, they said that kind of evidence could be really valuable in court. During the conversation, Sandra said some things that really scared us. She made a few disturbing comments, including one where she said she would save Ethan from me one way or another. She also said something like, "Courts don't always get it right, but family knows best." That kind of language made it very clear that she wasn't just upset, she was delusional and potentially dangerous. James remained calm, but he was firm. He told her she needed to leave immediately, and that from now on, any communication should go through our attorneys. When she refused to leave, he warned her that we would call the police. At that point, she finally backed off and left, but not before shouting, "This isn't over," as she got in her car and drove away. It was incredibly unsettling. As soon as I got back home and James told me what had happened, we contacted both our attorneys and the police. We didn't want to waste any time. Given the nature of her threats, we were able to get a temporary restraining order issued against Sandra. That order prevents her from coming anywhere near our home, Ethan's school, or my workplace. The police also told us they would be increasing patrols in our neighborhood over the next few days, just as a precaution. That gave us some peace of mind, but I still felt anxious knowing how unpredictable she had become. Later that evening, things escalated in a different direction. We started getting a bunch of text messages from Sandra's sister, Ethan's great aunt. We don't really talk to her much, so it was kind of surprising to hear from her out of the blue. The texts were filled with accusations saying we were destroying the family and that Sandra was just doing what any loving grandmother would do. It quickly became obvious that Sandra had been telling a completely twisted version of the story to her side of the family, making herself out to be the victim. That part hurt. It was frustrating knowing that she was manipulating the narrative and trying to make us look like the villains in all of this. At that point, James had had enough. He decided it was time to set the record straight once and for all. He wrote a long, detailed email and sent it out to his entire extended family. His siblings, cousins, aunts, uncles, everyone. In the email, he calmly and clearly explained everything that had happened, laying out the facts. He even included screenshots of the text messages that confirmed our babysitting arrangement with Sandra, along with photos of the supplies we had packed for Ethan that she had hidden, and a copy of the police report. He didn't write it to attack his mother or make her look bad, but to make sure everyone had the full, accurate story and wasn't getting swept up in her lies. The response we got was honestly overwhelming, in a good way. Almost everyone replied, expressing shock and support for us. A bunch of family members reached out privately too, saying they were sorry we were going through this and that they believed us. Some of them even shared their own stories. Turns out several people in the family had experienced similar manipulative behavior from Sandra in the past. One of James's cousins told us that Sandra once called her workplace pretending to be concerned about her mental health, all because the cousin didn't want Sandra to plan her wedding. That kind of behavior is just beyond anything. But it also made us realize that this wasn't just an isolated incident. It's part of a pattern. The most shocking revelation, though, came from James's father. He and Sandra have been divorced for over 20 years, and we've always had a cordial, though not particularly close, relationship with him. But after the email went out, he actually called James. During the call, he shared something pretty major. He told James that one of the main reasons for the divorce was Sandra's controlling behavior and what he described as an unhealthy obsession with James when he was a child. He said Sandra had tried multiple times to alienate James from him and had even made false accusations of abuse at one point, which were quickly dismissed because there was no evidence. Hearing that really shook us. It added a whole new layer of understanding to Sandra's behavior, made it even clearer that we were doing the right thing by taking legal action and protecting Ethan. Our attorney thinks this information could be really important for the upcoming hearing. We've started reaching out to the family members who shared their experiences to see if they'd be willing to provide statements or testify, and thankfully many of them said yes. It's reassuring to know we're not alone in this and that people are willing to stand by us. As for Ethan, he's been doing better since starting therapy. The child psychologist he's seeing has been wonderful, gentle, patient, and great at connecting with him. We've been really mindful about what we say around him. We try to keep things honest but age appropriate. The therapist advised us to explain things in simple terms, so that we told Ethan that Grandma, Sandra, told some untrue stories because she was confused, and that's why he won't be seeing her for a while. He still asks about her now and then, but those questions are becoming less frequent. He seems more at ease lately, which is all we can really hope for right now. On a more somber note, we're having a small get-together as a tribute to my mom, and it's coming up this weekend. It's been tough trying to grieve and deal with all this chaos at the same time. Thankfully, James's siblings have been incredibly kind and supportive. They offered to take turns watching Ethan during the service so we don't have to worry about childcare while we're saying our goodbyes. That small gesture meant a lot to me. I'm so grateful for their help and understanding. I'll post another update after the funeral and once we have more information about what's happening with the charges against Sandra. Thank you again to everyone who's been following our story and offering encouragement. It's helped more than you know. Update 2. Things have escalated so much in just the past few days, and honestly, I'm still trying to process how fast everything's moving. The day right after my last update, we got an official notice that Sandra had hired a new attorney. Not just any attorney. She hired a well-known, high-profile family lawyer who apparently has a reputation for taking on aggressive and contentious custody cases. The moment we heard this, we knew things were about to get even more intense. Her new attorney wasted no time, immediately filed a bunch of legal motions. One of them was to try and get the restraining order against her dismissed. On top of that, they formally submitted the custody petition Sandra had been threatening to file. What shocked and hurt me the most, though, was the claim included in that petition. They're now saying that I supposedly have undiagnosed mental health issues that make me an unfit parent. Reading that was like getting punched in the stomach. To have my mental health, something I take very seriously and have always been aware of, used as some sort of weapon to try and take my child away, it's cruel, unfair, and completely baseless. To make things even more emotional, my mom's funeral took place just yesterday. As expected, It was an incredibly difficult day, lots of tears, lots of memories, so much grief. But in a way, it was also healing. So many people showed up, friends, extended family, old neighbors, people I hadn't seen in years. They shared stories about my mom's kindness, her warmth, her sense of humor, and how she had touched their lives in different ways. It meant the world to me. It reminded me of who she was at her core and helped me feel a little more connected to her, even though she's no longer here. James stood right beside me the entire time, holding my hand, supporting me, never once leaving my side. And just like they promised, his siblings took turns watching Ethan, making sure he was taken care of during the service. Their support, along with the love from so many others, except Sandra and her sister, of course, was truly overwhelming. It gave me the strength I didn't even know I had. Unfortunately, the peace and comfort from that day didn't last long. This morning we woke up to something that made our stomachs turn. Sandra had gone online and created a public Facebook page called Justice for Ethan. The page was full of lies and twisted stories. She posted heavily edited versions of our old text conversations, basically cherry-picking messages and removing all the context to make it look like I was unstable or irresponsible. She also uploaded a bunch of out-of-context photos that made it seem like Ethan was sad or neglected, and worst of all, she shared actual pictures of Ethan, something we've always tried to avoid to protect his privacy and safety. Seeing our son's face splashed on a public page, with complete strangers commenting and making judgments about our parenting, was infuriating. These people don't know us. They don't know our situation. Yet they were leaving comments based on Sandra's false narrative, saying horrible things, assuming the worst. It was heartbreaking and deeply disturbing. Our attorney didn't waste any time. She immediately sent Sandra a cease and desist letter demanding she take down the photos of Ethan and stop posting defamatory content about me. We also reported the photos directly to Facebook, and thankfully they took down the pictures of Ethan fairly quickly. But the page itself is still up for now, and the damage it's doing emotionally, reputationally, is hard to put into words. As if that wasn't enough, something even more disturbing happened later in the day. James's youngest sister, Lily, called us crying. She was clearly shaken. The night before, Sandra had shown up at her apartment completely unannounced. She didn't call or text ahead. She just showed up, demanding that Lily sign an affidavit supporting the claims in her custody petition. Specifically, Sandra wanted Lily to back up the idea that I have mental health issues and that I am a bad mother. Lily refused. She told Sandra point blank that she had only ever seen me be a loving, present, caring mom. She said that Ethan was clearly happy and safe with us, and that she wouldn't lie just to help Sandra win a custody battle. That's when Sandra snapped. She started yelling, accusing Lily of betraying the family, and even threatened to cut her out of the will if she didn't do the right thing. It was so manipulative and controlling. Thankfully, Lily managed to record part of the conversation on her phone once things started getting out of hand. She was brave to stand her ground, especially considering how aggressive Sandra became. Lily came over to our house this morning and gave us the recording. She was still visibly upset, but very clear in her stance. She wanted to help, and she wasn't going to be bullied into supporting lies. When we gave the recording to our attorney, she said it was extremely helpful and could be powerful evidence of Sandra's ongoing attempts to manipulate family members and fabricate support for her case. We also updated our police report to include this incident. One of the most eye-opening parts of all this is how quickly Sandra's carefully maintained facade is falling apart. At first, a lot of family members were hesitant to get involved. Some wanted to stay neutral, and others just didn't know the full story. But now that they're seeing how she's behaving, how far she's willing to go, more and more people are coming forward to share their own experiences. James's brother Matt and his wife said they're ready to testify about the false CPS report Sandra filed against them years ago. James's other sister Emma opened up about a shocking story that Sandra had actually cancelled her college scholarship behind her back because she didn't want Emma moving across the country. The lengths she has gone to in order to control the people around her is just beyond anything we imagined. Even more concerning, we learned from James's father, who divorced Sandra decades ago, that during their divorce proceedings, a court-appointed psychologist had raised concerns about Sandra's mental health. The psychologist had suggested Sandra might have narcissistic personality disorder. There was never a formal diagnosis, though, because Sandra refused to continue with the psychological evaluations. Still, this explains so much. Her inability to accept responsibility, her extreme reactions to any form of rejection, her obsession with control, it all fits. It's sad, honestly, but also terrifying because her behavior is now directly harming our child. Given everything, our attorney is now strongly recommending that we request a psychological evaluation of Sandra as part of the custody proceedings. She thinks the judge is very likely to grant it based on the pattern of behavior and the mounting evidence we've gathered. James and I are hesitant, not because we doubt it would be helpful, but because we're worried it might push Sandra to lash out even more. Still, we know how important it is to have all the facts laid out in front of the court. The police investigation into Sandra's false report is also moving forward. They've been actively interviewing witnesses, including the officers who responded to the original call. Those officers confirmed that Ethan's belongings had been hidden in Sandra's home, which directly contradicted her claim that we had abandoned him. The police also spoke to Lily about what happened at her apartment and her recording of the conversation. The detective who's handling the case told us they're taking everything very seriously and are now looking into filing additional charges beyond the original false report. That was reassuring to hear. It feels like we're finally being heard. James is having a really tough time emotionally. He always knew his mother could be difficult. She's been controlling and overbearing for as long as he can remember. But this is something else entirely. Watching her hurt the people he loves, twist the truth, try to manipulate the legal system to take his son away has been devastating for him. It's forced him to re-examine a lot about his childhood and the relationship he had with her growing up. He's recently started seeing a therapist to work through those feelings, which I think is a really positive step. He's trying to stay strong for all of us, but I know this is hitting him deeply. I'll update again after the meeting with the attorney and once we have more information about what's going to happen next with the criminal charges. Thank you again to everyone who's been supporting us, offering advice, or simply checking in. Having this community and this outlet has helped me stay grounded during what has honestly been the most stressful and surreal time of my life. Update 3. I'm still in shock over what's happened in the past 72 hours. Our attorney had warned us that custody cases can take unexpected turns, but nothing could have prepared us for this. The day after my last update, we met with our attorney to prepare for the custody hearing. During this meeting, she received an email from Sandra's attorney requesting an emergency conference call with the judge. Apparently, Sandra had been hospitalized following what her attorney described as a stress-induced medical event, and they were requesting a postponement of all legal proceedings. Our attorney was skeptical and insisted on verification from the hospital. During the conference call, the judge ordered Sandra's attorney to provide medical documentation by the end of the day. What happened next was truly unexpected. The medical records show that Sandra had indeed been admitted to the hospital, but not for the reasons her attorney had implied. According to the emergency room doctor's notes, Sandra had arrived at the hospital making bizarre claims about being followed by private investigators and claiming that I was part of a conspiracy to take Ethan away and destroy her family. She had become so agitated that she had to be sedated, and the attending psychiatrist had placed her on a 72-hour psychiatric hold for evaluation. The psychiatrist's preliminary report noted concerns about possible delusional disorder with paranoid features, though they emphasized that a complete evaluation would take time. The report also mentioned that Sandra had admitted to not taking prescribed psychiatric medication for several months, medication none of us, including James, knew she had been prescribed. The judge immediately ordered a full psychological evaluation before any custody proceedings could continue. He also extended our temporary restraining order and granted us sole temporary custody of Ethan, with explicit instructions that Sandra was to have no contact with him until the evaluation was complete and reviewed by the court. James was devastated by this revelation. All these years, his mother had apparently been struggling with untreated mental health issues that she had hidden from the family. He feels guilty for not noticing signs earlier, though our therapist has assured him that people who are determined to hide their condition can be very good at maintaining a facade, especially with family they see intermittently. The most surprising development came the next day when Sandra's sister, the one who's been supporting her, called James in tears. She apologized profusely for her role in the situation, explaining that she had genuinely believed Sandra's version of events because Sandra has always been so convincing when she feels she's right. She revealed that Sandra has had episodes like this before, though usually less severe, and that their parents had always covered for her, dismissing her behavior as Sandra being dramatic. The sister explained that after seeing the medical report, she realized how serious the situation was and how much Sandra needed proper help rather than enablement. She also admitted that Sandra had been telling increasingly paranoid stories about me over the past year, claiming I was trying to turn James and Ethan against her and that I secretly hated her. None of this was true, but Sandra had become convinced of it. Yesterday, we received word that after the 72-hour hold, Sandra's doctors recommended inpatient treatment, which she initially refused. However, after James visited her, with his therapist present for support, and gently encouraged her to accept help, she agreed to a 30-day inpatient program focused on diagnosis and stabilization. During their conversation, Sandra had moments of clarity where she seemed to recognize that her perceptions had become distorted, though she still maintained that her concerns about my parenting were valid. The doctors explained to James that this kind of partial insight is common and that with proper treatment, Sandra could develop a more realistic understanding of the situation. Sandra's attorney has formally withdrawn the custody petition, acknowledging that it was filed under false pretenses driven by Sandra's untreated condition. The police have also decided not to pursue criminal charges at this time, given the medical circumstances, though they've left the case open pending the outcome of Sandra's treatment. We've spoken with Ethan's therapist about how to explain this to him. She suggested being honest but simple, that Grandma Sandra is sick right now and needs special doctors to help her feel better. And that's why he won't be seeing her for a while. We've reassured him that being sick isn't anyone's fault and that we all hope Grandma gets the help she needs. James's siblings have been incredibly supportive through all of this. They've shared their own stories of concerning behavior they've noticed over the years, but had dismissed as just mom being mom. There's a sense of collective grief among them for the mother they thought they knew, and for the years of untreated illness, and for the damage it's caused to the family. As for me, I'm still processing everything. There's relief that the custody threat is over, sadness for what James and his family are going through, and lingering anger at the pain Sandra caused Ethan with her lies. I'm trying to focus on healing for myself, for Ethan, and for our family unit. Our attorney has advised us to maintain the restraining order for now, even though Sandra is in treatment. She suggested we can revisit the situation after Sandra completes the program and her doctors provide a clear treatment plan and prognosis. Any further contact between Sandra and Ethan would need to be supervised and contingent on her continued treatment compliance. The truth is, I don't know what our relationship with Sandra will look like moving forward. On one hand, I understand now that her actions were influenced by an untreated mental illness. On the other hand, The harm she caused was real, and my primary responsibility is to protect Ethan. James is hopeful that with proper treatment, his mother might become stable enough to have a healthy, limited relationship with Ethan in the future. I want to be open to that possibility, but I'm also wary. We've agreed to take things one day at a time and to be guided by the mental health professionals involved. For now, we are focused on helping Ethan feel secure, supporting James through this difficult revelation about his mother, and finally having space to properly grieve my mom. I've started therapy as well to process everything that's happened. I want to express my deepest gratitude to everyone who offered support and advice throughout this ordeal. Your perspectives helped us navigate an impossible situation and gave us strength when we needed it most. I may post another update after Sandra completes her inpatient program, but for now, we're taking a step back from the chaos to focus on healing as a family. Thank you all again. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.